like I said, the volume's kind of uh, buzzy, but it's okay.
Yeah, it sounds fine. For me, it sounds perfect. So,
Good.
yay! This is just lessons in life, right, Betty? You can't expect to get it the first or the 50th time.
Not in my life, anyway.
People wonder if we've been off the wagon, doing something we shouldn't have been doing. Those crazy people. We got to be crazy to follow the Lord, though, right, Betty?
Yeah.
You have to be willing to do some things you're not comfortable with. So
that's me in a nutshell. I everything for the past 10 years. Well, actually, for the past 30 years, things have been. I've had to learn how to do things over again because it's rough.
Well, you said that you had, and we don't have anybody else on yet, so we can just talk to them. You said you'd had a stroke before? Or a couple
I've had 2 strokes.
Oh, man.
One affected the left frontal cortex, and the other one affected the occipital lobe.
Yeah.
So that's language and vision.
That's all, Betty. I mean, that's not much to say, even, Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that I love about having the opportunity for like YouTube and stuff and the internet like we have is there's just so much to learn out there.
Is. And
good and bad.
I have a hard time with learning. I have a really, there are some things I can learn academically.
Yeah.
I can learn, I like to tell people this is me in technology, okay? It's like reading the driver's handbook. Okay, I could read the driver's handbook and I could get the whole thing. I could get 100% on the test, but that doesn't mean I know how to drive. You see what I'm saying? There's a disconnect there. That's what happens in my brain. There's a disconnect. There are some things I understand and some things I have to do over and over and over. And I have to do it consistently over and over and over again. And then I'll get it. Then it'll rewire my brain. But if I don't do it consistently, and if I don't do it, and if I don't have somebody over my shoulder telling me how to do it, like the messages you were sending me, that helps. And but I have to keep doing it over and over again, and I have to use that as a reference when I do things, because if I don't,
hello, 8 people. Thank you for coming by, and please tell us where you're from. My name is Melissa. I'm Catch the Buzz. I'm from Idaho, and this is
Betty Horn, and I'm from Sarasota, Florida, where Milton just hit.
Yeah. Oh, so go ahead, Betty, and tell about we're going to talk about the second coming of Jesus Christ. I'm going to talk about the different signs and stuff we're seeing at the temple. Because Betty, you were also a temple worker too, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I worked at the Orlando temple for several years, and then we moved to Denver. Well, Aurora, outside of Denver, and then we moved back. But we moved to Sarasota, and now the Orlando temple is closed because it needed not entire. What's the word? I'm sorry, I lose my words. Not restoration. That it needs refurbishing. Basically, there were some things. There were places where water was getting in, and I can't remember. There's panes of glass that were broken, and the carpets need to be redone. I mean, they need to redo the whole inside, but it's not going to be. It's supposed to only take a year, and it closed the end of June. That's the picture that you have is when we were there in June. I think the last week that it was open before it closed, and so now we have to go to Fort Lauderdale, which is twice the drive, and it's across the state.
Hello, person on our live stream in the chat. That's a very long name. It's Jefferson County Deputy Sheriff. Awesome. Anyways, go ahead, Betty.
But anyway, we have to go to Fort Lauderdale, which is across the state. We have to go, basically, we have to skirt between Lake Okeechobee and the Everglades. That'd be an interesting thing to look at on a map, in my opinion.
And you have two boys. You've had two boys, and they've passed away as adults, right?
Well, one was a teenager. Junior was, they were both killed by drunk drivers. Junior was killed in 1991 in Utah, and James was killed in 1995 in Orlando, well, St. Cloud, and that was both in the month of June. So June's a hard month for me. I mean, even now, it's a hard month, but I'm grateful for the gospel, and I'm grateful for the things that I know, because I know it's not forever. And I came to the realization that they miss me as much as I miss them. But Junior was 14 when he died. He would have been 15 the following September. And James was 21 when he died. So, yeah, it was rough. It's a whole new, you have to learn how to live without them. And there's a song in an old Emmylou Harris song that I don't know if she wrote it. I think she did. Yeah, I think she did. It's called Boulder to Birmingham. And it's basically, I would walk all the way from Boulder to Birmingham just to see your face.
Oh, I know that song. Yes, I know that song.
That there's a line in it that says, "The hardest thing is knowing I'll survive." And that the truer statement has never been made. I mean, that is absolutely the truth.
Yeah, and that's the thing is too, is that people worry so much about like losing things that they don't live, you know. And so it's like, but guess what, if you never, then you also never have anything, right? I mean, I know for me, sometimes people go like, you know, having gone to the temple like pretty much every week for like over 10 years, and I have 7 kids, and my youngest is 8. That's not easy. So that means I was having babies, and two of them were twins during that time. But I just felt like this is required and necessary for me, for my family.
Yeah. Yeah. And
welcome from Alabama.
I love the temple. I absolutely I had an experience in there, and this kind of solidifies what happened. I mean, there is a hereafter. I didn't see anything. Don't get me wrong. I didn't see anything. But you know how teenagers will walk around with their faces in their phones, and they run into poles and stuff like that, right? Well, I was coming back from a break, and I was going into the restroom. Hold on, my phone is ringing, and I'm going to hang up on it, because they're all not scams, but well, kind of, yeah. They're all spam, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Everybody wants me to change my Medicare insurance. This is that time of year. But anyway, I was in the temple, and I was coming back from a break, and I was in the basement, and I came around the corner, and I was going to go into the restroom and wash my hands and, you know, get ready where I needed so I could go to my next station. On the way to the elevator, I literally bumped into my older son. And I heard this, "Oh, hi, Mom." And in my brain, I just said, "Oh, hi, James." And I walked around the corner and I'm in the bathroom and washing my hands and combing my hair and getting ready for my, and I'm walking out of the bathroom. I mean, this was probably at least a minute or two later. And I stopped and I thought, wait a minute, what just happened? It was
Yes,
so natural.
I
It
don't know
was,
how to say your name. Say tick. Yes, we are seeing you. Sorry, I was trying not to interrupt, buddy.
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. But yeah,
You just figured out what to do, right, buddy? This is our first time. We're newbies.
yeah, yeah. But and I like to say that I'm a techno T-Rex. My brain is too small and my hands are too short to reach the keyboard.
Well, and so you guys know. So if you didn't hear, I'm in Idaho, and Betty's in Florida.
Yeah.
So my channel is Catch the Buzz, and Betty Horns is
Betty Horn.
Yeah.
Real original, right?
Yeah, and I felt really bad because you'd finally come up with another channel name, and then being business minded like I am, I go and look up to see if somebody else already has that name, and they had just gotten it. Like I think it was like a week or two before. So you almost had gospel glimpses.
Yeah, I knew I couldn't get it. That's all I knew. Yeah. But anyway, that's okay. I'll figure something out.
Mine is. Yeah. So.
But
anyway,
I've actually had my channel for like 10 years, and my first video is way different than anything that I'm doing now. My first video is my new normal, and it's talking about what happened when my children died and how now I have to face a new normal. And so, and then it goes from there. And when I started doing YouTube videos semi-regularly, I realized that I already had a channel. I didn't know I had a channel, and I looked back and I thought, oh, I didn't realize that started my channel. So anyway, so if anybody wants to know my story, it's interspersed throughout. But yeah, anyway, I'm very happily married. We've been married for over 30 years now, and we actually went to the same high school, but didn't know each other then. I was in the band and he was on the football team, and never the twain shall meet. But we know some of the same people, and we had friends, some of the same friends, but it's like, oh, we just didn't know each other. 25 years later, I'd been to Utah and back to Florida, and he'd been to Alaska and back to Florida, and we meet at a Circle K.
Yeah, my daughter was wanting, it wasn't a Circle K. My daughter's like, I want to go to a 7-Eleven. I hear they're really cool. And I'm like, why? I don't. But anyways, yeah. So, well, my husband and I had the same thing. We were in the same state, but we never met each other. So,
yeah.
But he's 2 years older than me. But anyways, yeah. So we're talking about the temple and signs that, of the second coming with it. Oh, let's see. Of course, now I'm trying to think, right? All right. So for me, when it comes to signs of the second coming and the preparations for the temple to be closed. So I started working at the temple. Okay. So they made it so that the young people going on their missions could go in like 2014, could start working at the temple. So because I talked to the temple president about this when I went in and was doing some temple work, and I'm like, okay, I need to do this for a video. So that 2014 about is the time when the young people could go work at the temple before their missions. And I don't know about you, but when I saw them the first time, I was like, is it obvious on my face? I'm like, somebody beautiful and young. No, to me, they're honestly, and of course, your hair is not white. My hair's got gray in it. But I just was like, in my mind, the perfect temple worker has white hair, and they're wearing white, and they look like an angel, and they're all white.
Oh, if I hadn't had my hair pulled back, you'd see how white my hair is. It's kind of salt and pepper, but yeah, my hair's white. It's grayish. Yeah.
Now you can see my gray hair right here.
Yeah, I have a lot.
Yeah.
I think I have a lot more than you do.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Well,
I don't mind. My mother had white hair. I mean, it was white, 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 white from the time I remember. And
yeah.
she was, how old was she? She was 37 when she had me.
Yeah.
And and I don't remember her with dark hair. I see pictures of her with dark hair, but I don't remember her. But her hair was not gray like mine is. Hers was white, just white. And my dad's was jet black. I mean, it was just black, and it finally grayed. Probably maybe 5 years before he died. It started graying, but it was red. He was a prisoner of war of the Japanese in World War II, and
Oh,
one of the things they did was shave their heads for trying to humiliate them. But in fact, what they did is they saved them because they didn't have to deal with head lice. When they kept them shaved, they didn't have to deal with the head lice. So,
it's
but
true.
when it grew back jet black.
Yeah. Well, and
Kind of interesting.
I don't know how to say this name. I'm going to say Kagan. Kagan. I don't know, Kagan. How do you want us to say your name? And they said Temple of the Lord. And Kagan says, I'm from Naples.
Yeah.
I moved to Alabama after the last hurricane.
Yeah.
I was in.
I don't blame. Naples was just about devastated from. That's Ian, the one that hit that one. Holy cow! That's the one that Governor DeSantis took 2 weeks to rebuild um, the bridge between. I don't remember if it was Fort Myers or Naples and Sanibel Island. 2 weeks and it was up and running again. It's like I don't want to, I hate to be political because I'm not a political person and I hate politics, but I love what our governor's been able to do for us. And this year it was the same. I mean, the Big Bend area, they keep getting pounded with hurricanes and they're still recovering. I mean, everybody's up in North Carolina, which they should be.
Mm-hmm.
And they're talking about that devastation, but they don't see that we have the same devastation in the Big Bend area in Florida. It's awful. I mean, they weren't even done recovering from last year, and then they get plowed with Helene, and then it just kept plowing its way up. But I mean, those are signs. These are signs because okay, the scientists are going to blame it on climate change and whatever else they come up with. But we know that these are signs. And one of the things I like to say about Milton, I mean, Milton went from a category 5, one of the 5 strongest hurricanes ever recorded. It went from a Cat 5, pushing 200 miles per hour sustained winds, Cat 5, and down to a Cat 3, down to a Cat 2 within, I'm going to say, less than 2 hours, which is, it just doesn't happen when it's coming across warm water and it's still warm and all this. And there was nothing. There was no wind shears to cut off the top. There was no disruption in the temperature of the water to slow it down. Nothing. But when it hit, it looked like the bottom got pulled out of it. It literally, you can see pictures of it, and it looks like the bottom got pulled out of it. And that is what made it lose its power. I mean, it still did a lot of damage. There was like 178 tornadoes that accompanied all up the state of Florida. And there was probably more damage from the tornado than the hurricane. But that's one of the signs. Anyway,
we should get back onto the temple, and we're definitely. I have another video to do about those kinds of things too. But with the temple stuff, so young people working in 2014, and then I had always wanted to be a temple worker, and I was really jealous of the people who, I was like, I've heard that you couldn't be a temple worker till all of your kids were out of the house, and then they had the missionaries getting to be temple workers. And I was like, oh, that's so great. Oh, they get to do it and I still can't. I'm like, oh, it's going to be forever till I can. I mean, I love my kids, but I really want to be a temple worker. And I heard about the blessings with it. And so I'm like, I can use those blessings. I can use safety for my kids, right? And so I think it was right before, or maybe when I became a temple worker, like that's when they changed it. Really close around that time. So it was like November 2019 is when I started working at the temple. And so I just remember we were having like a Sunday school class, and the bishop was like, hey, so they need temple workers, and you can be, and I was like, okay. And he's like, and I think I asked him, or he told me, and I was like, well, can I, my kids are home. He was like, oh no, you can be a temple worker. And I was like, oh, what? So anyways, I was like, can I call myself to do that? You're saying I can volunteer or something. I didn't even realize till I was a temple worker that you could be called to be one. I just thought that everybody probably volunteered, So,
yeah, well, what it was when we were called, they announced that they needed temple workers, and so we had to go talk to our bishop, and then the bishop extends a call after he talks to you. But I always thought that you could be a temple worker when your children were of like like in the youth, like young women, young men, that age. And that was my understanding. But of course, at that point, I wasn't. Oh my goodness!
You didn't have kids at home anymore, so it didn't matter, probably, right?
Well, the thing is when my kids were teenagers, there's no way. I mean, okay, I made the tabernacle choir. I never got a chance to sing with them because my younger son died and I moved back home. But I was thinking about how in the world am I going to go on tour? How in the world am I even going to go to practices and leave my kids at home as teenagers? My younger son, I think I've told you before, he was like Huckleberry Finn incarnate. And I would make him promise me every morning that he would come home that day, that he wasn't going to run away. If he promised me, he wouldn't run away. But if I didn't ask him to promise me, he was gone. I mean, it was a nightmare. But my other son was like born with a missionary tag. I mean, he was just straight. He really was. Right is right and wrong is wrong, and that's it. But I just had so much. I was working 2 jobs. I was divorced, and I'm trying to raise my kids, and I was working, and then I didn't. I ended up working at the church insurance company at DMBA, and I was working overtime, so I was working like 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. I mean, there was that much work to do. It was, oh my gosh, that was hard work. And my kids would actually ride the bus to come up there, spend time with me. But I just couldn't imagine being a temple worker at that point. I just couldn't. It was like, it would have been impossible. It really would have been impossible for me, on top of everything else that I was doing and responsible for. But yeah, but my current husband and I, we've been sealed in. We actually fought a hurricane to go to the temple to be sealed. Hurricane Aaron in 1995, because it was 5 weeks after my older son died. And it was before, it used to be you had to wait a year to get somebody's work done. Well, we were able to get his work done at that time. It's like the bishop knew him, the stake president knew him. He was very well known in the area, and they knew he was getting ready to go on a mission. So they let me go ahead and have his work done. And I was able to have his brother's work done as well at that time. And then we found out about cross ceilings. And if anybody doesn't know about cross ceilings, what it is if you're divorced and your children are not sealed to either one of you. You can have them sealed to you, and they can have them sealed to them, and then the children will have the choice. This is after they die. You know, if your children are gone, you can have them sealed to you, and your ex-husband can have them sealed to them. And then the children choose who they want to go with. Now, in our case, we had them sealed to us, but my ex-husband had passed away, and his sister had done his work, but he wasn't even married to anybody at that point. So it's almost like he lost out on that, at least in this, what we know on this side of the veil. He lost out on that opportunity. So, and then the children have the choice, and they have a choice to just not be sealed to either one of us. You know, they have a choice. We all have choice. We all have a choice to be in everything in our lives. And that's one of the things that people are mixing up. They're thinking these communist countries, granted, your rights are minimized, but you always have a choice. You have a choice to live by it or not live by it, whatever the it is. You have a choice. And if you choose not to live with it, then you have to live with the consequences of, well, either way, you have to live with the consequences of your choice. And you have to weigh those consequences out in your brain and in your heart and determine what it is you want to live by. And if you want to live by communist rule, then that's your choice. If you don't want to and you end up in prison, that's your choice. You always have a choice. Oh, somebody, he says, you live by the cross, you die by the cross. You go against it, you die in sin.
Yes, good job remembering to read that too, Betty.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, good job remembering to read that too, Betty. Because I kind of read it, but I'm like, oh, I need to read it.
And they also said the hurricane that came through Florida was so horrible, he moved to Alabama last year because with it being hurricane season still in November 30th. Yes, it's actually, there's another hurricane brewing out there right now, and we don't know what direction it's coming. It hit Cuba at as a Cat 3, and if you don't know, Cuba is just 90 miles from Key West. Mm-hmm. And so we don't know where it's going, but we pray it just kind of, I'm sorry, what?
Is that Raphael? Is that the Hurricane Raphael?
Yes. Isn't that an interesting name?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Well, see, in talking about names, when we were talking about with the temple, so then I got to be a temple worker, and then it's been interesting for me because, you know, as we've seen, have you gotten to go to the temple quite often? I mean, you aren't currently a temple worker, right?
No, I was. We were when we lived in St. Cloud before we moved out to Colorado. We were temple workers, and we lived about, depending on traffic, we lived about maybe an hour away from the temple, and so we would go every week. But now that we live in in Sarasota, okay, this is the way it works. The temple is approximately a 1 3/4 to 2 hour drive away. But then you have Disney. You have to go through Disney traffic, which makes it about 4 hours because I-4 ends up as a parking lot. And I'm serious. It ends up, you can sit and not move for 20 minutes. And then you roll about 15 feet and you sit for another 15 minutes. It's that bad. And so we know the back roads, but still the back roads takes us about 4 hours because we stop halfway through and stretch our legs, but it takes about 4 hours.
Well, see, in my spot where I'm in Idaho, I can get to 2 temples in 20 minutes.
Yeah, we don't have that.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I get frustrated sometimes when they talk about doing temple work, and I'm like, a lot of times people underestimate like what you can do with your family history. But the cool thing is that so for me, like I said, second coming with the temple is so you have more people being able. They're looking around the room, and my mom's been a temple worker for years, and her and I were working together actually. Well, she was working the shift before me, and I worked the one after, but we'd see each other for a little bit, so that was really cool. But I'm sitting there looking around with it, them saying what who's most at risk for COVID, and then like people without medical conditions or elderly people, and I'm like, I'm part of the 20% that doesn't fit in that category. I'm sitting there just looking around, and I'm like, there's no way, they cover like, being 6 feet apart and not having.
I think that was a bunch of garbage. I think that was the government.
The temple, at my post in the hallway or whatever, and just.
Yeah, I think that was the government shutdown. I really think they tried it to see if they could do it, and now they found out they can do it, so they're going to do it again. I mean, that's just all there is to it. And the shutting down of the temples altogether was horrible. And
and the churches.
I'm sorry, what?
And the churches.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes.
Because that was everybody had a belief in anything.
And we lost a lot of activity. I mean, even now, our poor ward. I'm the primary music leader, and we have a total of 15 children on the roster. 4 of them are in an inactive. So that leaves 11. Now, the most that have shown up since I've been doing this is 9. And most of the time it's about 4 or 5. And it's never the same kids. I mean, it'll be this one kid and 3 different kids, and then another kid and 3 other different kids. It's just never the same kids. So it's extremely difficult to teach them the songs. And so we're doing it real simple. And because of the hurricane, it postponed our primary program until the 8th of December. And now I'm supposed to teach them Christmas song to sing in the Christmas service. And it's like, we're still working on our primary program. Yeah. It's like I got 2 weeks to teach them a song. 2 weeks. Actually, 1 week. Well, 2. I'll have the 8th, and then the next Sunday, and then the next Sunday they need to sing.
Let's see. So Kagan says, but God says in the Bible that for people who aren't following Christ, God says, why are you doubting me? Am I not good enough? Why do you not believe in me? And then he said, do not trust my timing or my word. Says God is real. He is here. Yes. Kids are falling away from the Lord. And the thing is, it's happening because of parents and stuff too, because I was in charge of the nursery during right after COVID after the churches reopened from COVID. Right. We had a hard time having people bring their kids back. I was grateful that I'd been in nursery before, and I just have a gift with kids, not always my own kids, but other people's kids often. And because I'd watch other people's kids like just doing in-home childcare for like 15 years. And so I could, be able to figure out how to work with them, with each different kid. And like each kid was a puzzle to try to figure out. But anyways, with the temple stuff though, so then we had to close down, and then the temple reopened. But during that time, I was like, I'm used to having time set aside to do things, to work at the temple. So I'm like, okay, I've got to do family history or something. So I did some indexing, so that was good. But we talk about seeing the second coming signs at the temple. I can say from going over the years what kinds of names I've seen. And I remember it really caught my attention when I did one, it's probably a year ago now. It was from Iceland. And I was like, oh, has anybody heard somebody do a name from Iceland? And like, at least I knew how the temple workers. So I'm just reverently being like, hey, have you heard this name? Have you seen this name? But there's just so many amazing miracles at the temple. Like, for example, I was at the end of the ceiling, and I stayed a bit after. I was talking to the sealer. Well, another patron was talking to the sealer, and I was just listening in. And he said how he'd gone to, it was over by Russia, or European. It was that area of the world of a temple. And he said that he was talking to a sealer at the time, and the guy goes, well, this is amazing. How many languages do you know? And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, I only know one. It's German. And he goes, how is that possible? We're speaking in English right now. He said, and the sealer said, when I am at the temple, I can speak 7 languages.
I have heard that.
Yeah, and he said, as soon as I get out the door, just one. And I was like, how is that not a miracle?
The last ceiling, we went up to help our bishop and his wife do some of their temple work. We're running out of names in our family, which is weird, but we went to help them do some ceilings. And well, we did a session, and then we went in to get some ceilings done. And the man who did the ceilings for her family, he was saying the same exact thing, that he can speak, like, I don't remember how many languages, I think, but it might have been 7. That seems to ring a bell. But anyway, he says, yeah, he can speak, as long as he's in there, he can speak that many languages, but he can't, the minute he leaves, it's gone.
And I'll say too, so I'm part Hispanic, and so I have a little bit of a gift for languages. We had a Russian exchange student, and I couldn't understand what everybody's saying, but there's a lot of cognates, which are similar words in other languages. Yes. And so a lot of times, that's the thing, is if you learn one foreign language, you can start to kind of pick up on other ones. Yeah. And so that's another video I'm going to do too, is about all the different languages that the Karma of the 12 speak.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I learned a little bit of German when I was in high school, and I found out how many words are common with English. And then my first husband was from Puerto Rico, and his grandmother lived with us, and she didn't speak a word of English. So I learned, I keep saying poquitito, and everybody laughs at me. That's
just
how
a little
much Spanish I know.
Yeah, the more
very
details you
little.
add on, the more.
Yeah, but I've lost a lot of it. But it's funny, because if I listen long enough, I start picking up words again. My problem is it moves, the language moves too quickly for me to pick up, except for a word or two. But as I listen more intently, then I start to pick up a little bit more. I know how to count. I mean, I know because I used to have to count her change. I used to have to tell her how much things were, and she'd give it to me, and I'd show her how to count it, because she was a little bit, she didn't have dementia. She was,
Alzheimer's.
No, it wasn't Alzheimer's. It was something that her whole life she was that way. It's like she was, low IQ. That's the best way I can put it. She wasn't, what's the word? There again, I'm searching for words. She didn't have, what is that? The kids are born with, and they have too many chromosomes. There's anyway, it wasn't that, but she just, it's like
she didn't have Down syndrome.
It's like she was a child. It's like she couldn't think past certain things, and she was very naive, and she was very gullible. And that's one of the reasons she lived with us, is so that we wouldn't allow people to take advantage of her. But
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that woman she cleaned my house. And we weren't members of the church at that time. I wasn't. And she was Catholic, and she would kneel and pray morning, noon, and night. And it didn't matter where she was. If she was cleaning the kitchen, and she would wipe down the chairs and the legs and everything. And she'd stop and say a prayer just right there, And then if she was in her bedroom, of course, but she said prayers like 5 times a day. She really did. And she was such a good-hearted woman. But yeah, we would go shopping, and I would count out her change for her, and so that she would try to understand that that's how much the item was that she wanted. And it's interesting that, yeah, languages in fact, I took a linguistics class in college, and they weren't going to let me in because it was it was meant for seniors, and for that rank, that's what it was. But I guess they figured I tested out to where I could be in that class, and that I had several classes like that, which is frustrating now because all that knowledge is locked up in my brain somewhere. But that's okay.
Let's see. In Kangan, you said our service starts at 6. That's cool. Well, and it's nice when different churches have some flexibility and stuff on their services. And I know, even being a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there's more flexibility than I realize with people's times, and even their temple schedules that they're open and stuff are different. Because I believe that in some countries, I think they might be open on Sundays or something like that, or they're open on Mondays because people work 6 days a week.
Well, in Israel, they have their services on Saturday because that's the state law. That's the country's law. You shut down on Sundays because that's Orthodox Jewish. You don't do anything on the Sabbath. So Saturdays are your Sabbath, and Sundays are a work day, like any other day. But Saturdays are the Sabbath. So just something. But I remember when I was a little child, and this might tie in because I remember reading about, I believe it was Anna. And I was very precocious. So I was reading the Bible when I was 4. I didn't understand everything in it, but I understood certain concepts, just small concepts. And I was reading about Anna, and I remember learning that she had been a widow, and she had worked in the temple all those years. And she was one of the ones, of course, that saw the baby Jesus. And I remember thinking and praying about it. It's like, I want to do that. I want to work in the temple. So I was 4 years old. I wasn't a member of the church. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't even know this church existed. I knew about the Tabernacle Choir because my family is very musical, but I thought it was just a choir like the Vienna Boys Choir. I didn't think it was attached to any particular religion. And so anyway, and the other thing is I remember reading, I believe it's Matthew 11:11. I should have looked that up, and I forgot. I was going to look it up. But it's where Jesus is talking to his disciples, and he is talking about where everybody thought John the Baptist was the greatest of all. He was just so great. And he says, even the the least in my kingdom is greater than he.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember catching on to that. And I remember praying, God, please let me in your kingdom. I just want my toe in the door. That's all I want. And I spent my whole life looking for churches, looking for truth. We were raised, my dad was Catholic, my mother was Presbyterian. They decided to join the Lutheran church because I thought it was a good compromise. We were actually baptized as babies in the Catholic church. But that's the only, and I would go to services. My mother's best friend was Catholic, and I would go with them on occasion. There were other neighbors that were Catholic, and I would go with them on occasion, but not very often. And we were raised Lutheran. And after my parents got divorced, then my mother went back. Well, we started looking for churches that were local, that we could walk. And we went to a Methodist church that was, we were kind of disillusioned with the Lutheran church. And anyway, um, so we went to this Methodist church and we went someplace else I can't remember. And then we just decided to go to the First Presbyterian Church. And so that's where we went. And then I had a good friend from school. She's still a good friend. And I would go to church with her all the time. She was, what was it? Alliance, Missionary Alliance Church. And, and then I've been to Baptist churches and Christian churches, literally titled Christian church. And I've been to, and then after my mother died, and I had to go live with my dad, my first stepmom, we joined the Church of Christ because that's what she was raised in. And so I was pretty much there. And I did I studied, I was a student of the Bible. And I studied the Bible all the time. And anyway, when I still belonged to the Church of Christ when I got married the first time, but we just didn't. He never went. He was Catholic, and he never went to church. He didn't go to his church, but I just had this progression. I learned about this church and that church and the other church. I even was invited to a Passover service with a friend of mine who was Jewish. So I even had all that, and so I've had a lot of instruction in different churches, and then life had to go into the details. But I ended up out in Salt Lake, actually Tooele, which is west of Salt Lake, and these people took me in like I was their long lost daughter. And here I am with two little kids under the age of 4. And I had $69 in my pocket. And that was it. We had nothing. And the clothes on our back, basically. And they took me in. And the only thing they asked is if I would listen to the missionaries. And I said, sure, I'll listen. And I had my, it's like I had my defenses. I knew the Bible. And then they would say something and I would ask them, well, where do you find that? And they would show me. And so I would think about it. And then I would have a question, and sometimes they didn't have the answer. They said, but the next time they came back, they would have the answer. And sometimes it's left for you to look up, But anyway, at this point, it's like I was kind of fighting them. I had my defenses. Well, what about this? What about this? And they always had an answer in one way or another, or at least something that was enough to convince me. And the more they taught, it's like it would settle in me. It would settle in my heart, and it was like, oh, this just makes sense. Oh, this just makes sense. I didn't have a huge evangelical manifestation of the Holy Ghost. It just made sense. Everything just made sense. And and it's like, and then I was baptized. And as I've grown in the church, I had one wonderful mentor. My second husband's mother was very, very, very strong in the church. And she knew things and she taught me things that it would have taken me 40 years or more to learn on my own. I really, there are things that I know now that even people my age don't know that have been lifelong members. And I have friends that literally come to me and say, "What about this? What about that?" And if I don't know the answer, I look it up. Just like, in fact, that was my mother. If I were to hear anything about my own mother, one of the things I remember is we'd ask her, "How do you spell this?" Look it up. How do you work this math problem? Look it up. That was her thing. Look it up. And she was right, even though we fought against it. It's like, how do you look up a word that you don't know how to spell? Look it up. And so she was really good that way. But anyway, that is the legacy that I have is from these wonderful women who have taught me in my life. And so it's just been it's been great, you know. So and I am able to help people. I have one friend that tells me all the time, and she'll tell other people, "Oh, I'll just go ask Betty. She'll know."
Yeah, that's how I get to work. They're like, "Oh, you do this job. You don't know where this is," and I'm like, the more you say that, the less confident I feel that I'm gonna know. But so yeah, and that's the thing is like you talk about like different extents it takes to help somebody to like join the church and to get baptized. And I'm sure it's the same way as when they're on the other side of the veil too. And
Oh
one thing that is important that I wanted to share that a lot of people don't know, is that the temple, when you're there doing work for people, they always told us that the person you do your work for is there. Were you told that
yeah.
before too? Yeah,
Oh
and
yeah.
so it just changes everything. And it makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so I will say there's two names that I did one time in a sealing session, and they were names from the temple. And one of them, the person's name was Free Love. So I was proxy for Free Love. And then the very next name after that, now, of course, the temple sealer had said, the people are here. They're real people. We want to be respectful. And he says,
Yes.
he goes, I was said to my parents, we had twins that had died. He goes, and they weren't real people to me until we had to have a proxy for the twins. And then he's like, it was a realization of them really being real. And
Yeah.
then, so of course, after this beautiful speech, I have the name Free Love. And all the patrons in the room were, trying to keep it together. And then the next name I had was Repentance.
Wow.
And that, even the sealer, he goes, okay, I'm sorry. They're like, after Free Love comes Repentance. It did. But, but I will tell you though, as the church spreads, and there's times when I'm trying to look at the map that shows where the temples are, I need to go look on there, and I'm like, what's this one out here in the middle of the ocean? And you make it big, and there's an island there. And I just think that people, it's like, guys, it's no big deal to build these temples in these places for these people, because those guys can never get to go to a temple in their whole life otherwise.
Yeah. Well, and
Lord
not
of the
just
Sea,
not
Lord
just
of the
that.
Sea, after Free Love comes Repentance. That's my husband, by the way. Hello, comments.
But
anyways,
yeah, and that's a lot of the temples that have been announced. They're for the millennium. They're going to be. These are temples that are bringing in the millennium. They're bringing in the second coming of Christ. I think about it, and it's just. I didn't think I would live this long. I didn't think I would live long enough to see the second coming of Christ. And I really believe he's coming soon. I think he's coming a lot sooner than people are saying. There are people who are saying, oh, it's 10, 20 years out. I don't think so. It would
to me,
surprise me.
Yeah, he can't come like a thief in the night if people, that's how he comes as a thief in the night, because I knew from that talk when Elder Stephen said it that people, I'm like, oh, they're going to go 10 years. Oh, so here's my other second coming things for the temple. Okay, so also before COVID happened, one of the temple presidents said, so the goal is we want to have another 100 temples in the next 6 years. And my mom said, oh, good. That means we have 6 years. And I was like, because people think we have 6 years, we don't have 6 years. And also when the Salt Lake Temple, when they first announced the renovation, it was going to be in this time of year, 2024. And so for me, that put it like a marker, a place marker right here this time of year. And then when COVID was happening, and so like I've been a convert. Well, I've been a member my whole life, but I do have like a grandfather who is a convert from Australia, and they got kicked out of their family because they joined the church. Wow. And then my great grandfather, he's from Mexico. He was going to a Catholic seminary. He was the oldest of 8 kids, and his family was like, they felt super blessed that he got to go to that school because we'd learn English. We would just have it made in life. They felt like, it was a big opportunity. He went there for several years, and he goes, I just can't do this. I don't believe in this. This is not right. And so then he stopped going to it. And when he told his parents that, they kicked him out of the house, which for us, my husband, this is like quite personal, because we had a child that was struggling with some things and just woke up one morning and all of her stuff was gone. And, we're going to work things out. It's going to be okay. But, I was like, I'm sharing that because some people are waking up and their kids aren't there today. But also, I cannot imagine cutting off my child because of something they do. We had a sister missionary, I'm just going to say briefly here, whose father was a head coach of a big football team, and I won't tell you who it is, a big prestigious school. She only had 2 kids, and because she joined the church, he kicked her out. He disowned her. And I'm like, okay. I wouldn't, if I had 100 kids, I wouldn't disown them for something. I said, but you only have 2, man. You only have 2. Something could happen to the one, right? But anyways, so I just think the sacrifices people make for the gospel. Yeah. And anyways, so I put a marker in this time of year for the people to say, oh, okay, because my mom said this too, and other people, okay, we know how we have that long then, because the temple's got to be done, right? And then it got interesting, because then they said, oh, unforeseen things have come up. In order to make the temple seismically sound for a big earthquake, we need to really redo the foundation. We need to put in the shock, shock absorbing things. My husband on here, he can tell you what it is. But he's like, we got to put all these base isolators. We got to put in these base isolators. Anyways, so they went through, and they had to go through a lot to do that. So to me, again, I'm like, oh, now we have the opportunity for people to think it's not going to be then, it's going to be later. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be like in the next couple months or whatever. But to me, it was still a warning to like, you need to be ready. And what's interesting is for me during that time of COVID, I just was looking for everything from the church, anything that I could get my hands on, I mean, I wasn't perfect at it, but a lot of stuff I was looking for it, just like thirsting and hungering for it. And so when he said that thing about the Salt Lake Temple and that there was an earthquake, I've seen many people on other comment sections since then, and they're like, there's going to be an earthquake in Utah. When? And I'm like, did you not hear about the Salt Lake Temple? They pretty much told you, like, hey, there's going to be an earthquake. Just so you know, there's going to be one. So
I've known that there was going to be an earthquake ever since I moved there in 1978. I'm just waiting for the big one.
So
and the Wasatch Fault is actually connected to the San Andreas Fault. A lot of people don't know that.
And see, another interesting thing is, I'm going to do a video about this also, but during COVID, we saw around the same time, so my husband's brother was living in Layton, Utah, which is pretty close to Salt Lake. There was the earthquake, and it freaked him out. Well, I get it, because it was like dark at night. And to him, I'm like, here's Utah's wake-up call. The alarm clock's going off. How are you doing, everybody? which is interesting because later on, President Oak said, he's like, this has been a test. You've passed, or you know that you didn't pass. Anyways, but so yeah, they had their earthquake, and it made the angel Moroni drop his trumpet. And I think it was after that we in Idaho had an earthquake. We don't have them all that often, or not in a place where you can feel it. And it wasn't. My husband would tell you, because so I think I'm one of the only people who's like, oh, I missed the earthquake. So I had a friend, and I had been given some flowers. I'd gotten some flowers, and I was like, I need to give these to somebody. Like, I just need to give them to somebody. And there's a lady I ministered to, and I brought them to her. Anyways, I was backing. It was like a 3-point turnaround to get out of her driveway. And the dogs out there, it was like a farm. The dog started acting weird. And so that seemed kind of strange to me. But again, I was like, trying to not hit anything and focus, So then my husband messages me, he goes, or calls me, he's like, hey, did you feel that? And I'm like, feel what? And I'm like, oh, dang it, Anyways, so to me, when you look on it, like Idaho's not like the most members of the church, but Idaho and Utah are the top 2 for percentage of LDS.
Yeah.
I'm like, that was a wake up for both of us to say, hey, how you doing? How you feeling about this right now, guys? And there's a lot of people that really started making some shifts of those wheat and the tares really happened a lot significantly during that time. I mean, we could go into the pandemic stuff. We won't do that too much at this time because that could be a whole other video. But when we're addressing stuff at the temple, I'm like, okay, we have younger people coming to work at the as temple workers, and then moms with kids at home being able to work as temple workers. Yep. And then after that is when things shut down and stuff, which I was really blessed. I was grateful that I got an opportunity to be a temple worker because I just felt like, okay, the Lord's blessing me. My kids will have what they need. Like, it's just going to be okay. Yeah. And so the video I did, like, submerged in the living water of Jesus Christ, is what I felt like when they had made the announcement about that they were going to do, close things down for 2 weeks to slow the spread, right?
Right.
And so I remember, and it's interesting because the store I was going to is the one I work at now. I've had a lot of interactions with the store I work at now, even though it's actually not my closest store, but I like that one. Anyways, I said to my daughter, hey, you want to come with me to the store? And she's like, yeah, okay. I'm like, I feel like I need you to come with me. And we prayed as we're driving. And then we prayed again, in the parking lot, we prayed again because I just knew there was the opportunity for the adversary to get in there and make people crazy. Because I would say when I'd driven home from the temple just before that and being on the freeway, it's like you could feel the tension. When as you're a mom and you hear when your kids are doing something and you're like, you mad? You frustrated? Are you okay? You can tell by the sound of how they do stuff. And that's how it's like on the freeway. It's like spiritually, it's like I could feel and see the other cars.
Yeah.
So let's see what my husband says. Lord of this Thing. So we're beekeepers too, by the way. So Lord of this Thing is his YouTube channel. So
what is the name from? That's what I want to know. Where do you get the name? Lord of the
Rings. Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
He just calls it Lord of the Sting.
Oh, Lord of the Sting. Okay.
So, yeah. So after free love comes repentance. Love you, dear. Yeah, love you too. It says the one in Idaho is actually first. Okay, so Idaho got their warning first of the earthquake. Yeah. Then Utah got theirs. So there might have been some humbling that happened there. There might have been somebody going, look, they're doing stuff over there, and then they got their earthquake and was like, oh, maybe our attention is being called to repentance or whatever.
Yeah, no, you get your earthquakes, we get our hurricanes.
Yeah, but we haven't had much. My husband's like, that's why we're in the Treasure Valley. It's a special spot where we don't have a lot of stuff. But
we're in Florida. I grew up in Florida. I'm from Florida. So it's like, I remember 5 years old when Hurricane Donna hit and the winds were so fierce that they literally forced the water through the walls. We were kids. We thought it was cute, but fun. But okay, we have a lot of our houses are built with concrete block. Mm-hmm. And so it goes through the I guess forced it through the concrete block like forcing it through a rock.
Yeah.
And it literally, and we thought it was. I thought it was flooding at first. When I first saw it, I was scared of my own shadow at that point. But I remember thinking it was flooding, and they said no, it was the rain was being forced through the walls. And then we thought it was fun because we had our floor wasn't carpeted. It was tile floor. It was I can't think of the material. It was like a tile, but so we were playing slip and slide on the living room floor.
Well, it's like my daughter's on the earthquake. She's a really good mother hen, and she goes, "Oh, hurry, girls!" And my other younger daughters are sitting there, with eyes glued to the TV, and she's trying to get them to come under our dining room table. That's a really heavy table, like it's solid wood. It's really heavy. And they didn't listen to her, but one of the children, the little sisters, is under there with her, and the other ones are just watching the TV like nothing has happened.
Yeah.
So we were about kids' trauma sometimes, right? And they're like having a great time, you know.
I remember when I first moved to Utah. Because I was deathly afraid of earthquakes. I really was, and I was having this dream, and I was telling my kids to get under the doorway, get under the doorway. I'm yelling in my dream, get under the doorway, under the doorway. And then I woke up. I see these two little faces in the doorway, and my older son says, "What do you want me to do now, Mommy?" I must have been yelling it in my sleep. Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
I can relate to that. Yeah, we'll see.
But I'm not afraid of hurricanes. I mean, I know we know when to stick around and we know when to pick up and leave. And the only reason we left at this one because our apartment complex here was built to withstand a Cat 5 hurricane. And we were going to stick around, but we were evacuated. Zone C was evacuated. And so I figured, well, that gives us our answer. We need to go. They were expecting an 18-foot storm surge, which would have buried this whole place. I mean, my ceilings aren't even 18 foot tall.
Yeah, of course.
And so we just figured it was, and we had a place to go in St. Cloud. So we went to Central Florida. That's generally the best place to go is up in the Orlando area. That's probably the best place to go for a hurricane because on either side you got coast and you're going to get, they even had storm surge on the Atlantic side because of this last hurricane.
Yeah.
And
your hurricane that was most direct to you was Hurricane Milton, right?
Yes. And well, we had 3 hurricanes hit this year. Debbie was the first, and it was a Cat 1, I think. But it gave us more damage in our area than Milton did.
And is this an unusual amount of hurricanes? Is it unusual or no?
No, we'll have seasons where all year long we're getting hit with hurricanes. And then we'll have like 4 or 5 years where we won't have a single hurricane.
Oh, really?
And then, because then we have hurricanes in the area, but it won't hit Florida. And then we'll have another series where 4 or 5 hurricanes come through. And that's just the way it is. But this year we had Debbie.
I'm sorry. Florida does get hit by multiple hurricanes a year usually then.
Oh, yes. Yes.
It is a stick out there in the water, basically.
No, they don't. They're actually that's what the water drives it. They lose power when they hit land because they don't have the warm water is their fuel. But they'll hit land and they just move on till they run out of steam. And
I'm just saying Florida's a stick out there in the water because it, Florida.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like hit me.
Like a finger. Here I am. Just come. I'm waiting.
Yeah, but yeah, like I said, our first one was Debbie, and that one flooded. Our parking lot was flooded. Our walkway out on the other side of the breezeway, it was almost up to where another couple inches we would have been flooded. I mean, our apartment would have been flooded, and then Helene came, and people don't realize that when anytime a hurricane comes, you don't just worry about the middle of the storm going through. You just don't worry about that. You have to worry about all of the winds extended out and how big around it gets and how tight it gets and how powerful it gets. We had what do they call it? Storm surges from each hurricane. We get storm surges. When Helene hit, there's a little island out here called Anna Maria Island, and it was a great tourist place. It was beautiful. It had nice little shops and kind of like a small town vibe, and it was just a beautiful place. It was really artistic and so on. It literally got buried by Helene. I mean, the water. I mean, the water was so high, the whole island got buried. When the water receded, each and every home and business was filled with sand. They were just filled, just totally packed with sand. And it's like people like that have to start all over again. And can you imagine having a home there and having to dig out everything that's just sand?
And it
And
does seem like we're having those reminders of what Christ said in the scriptures about how he's like, and the people were wicked, and I put them in the ocean. He's like, and the people were wicked, and I brought the lands upon them. And
yep.
the
And
scriptures
not
have
that
never been
everybody
so
on
alive.
not that everybody on Anna Maria Island was wicked. It's just a symbol. It's like, yes, this is what's going to happen to the wicked in the end. This is what happened to the wicked before Christ came here, the first time. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened. And
well, and to me too, I just help my uncle and my cousin. They both are really good at finding family history names, and but that's why I say it's like we're living in like there's a puzzle, and we all have different gifts and talents, and we all have different pieces. But we need those people to help complete it, and like we're all gonna have things that we see and things that we just don't see, and stuff.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's one of those things where that's part of why it's important right now for people to connect, and with things like YouTube and everything and online, is I'm like, there's too much knowledge out there. I'm like, there's so much information out there, and there's never been so much agency with the AI stuff. And again, agency for good or for ill, because the church is using it to be able to do family history, to do the indexing. And it's amazing. I know that by helping make these connections with my uncle and my cousin, and they were like, well, we want people to do the family history work because we're doing all the work, but we want people to do the names. And because, hey, Jack Lemon, you're my good friend. Because of people, me helping to connect them, all of a sudden, like within that day, within an hour, we had I said, hey, let's set up this link and everybody can just get on it. And they just added themselves. And so they send out all the invites, and pretty soon we have like at least 10 people on there. And it was cool because it shows like the name, and it shows it like a ghost when somebody's doing it. And so then all of a sudden there's all these names getting done, and it's just amazing. And my uncle has names in the 700s that we're doing.
We have one line that has been researched back to 180 BC. Our Throckmorton line has been my nephew, not a member of the church, but his mother is so meticulous. It's like, how do you know that? Where'd you get that source? How do you know that? Where'd you get that source? I mean, she's very meticulous that way. And not just about genealogy, but about anything. It's like, how do you know that? What where do you get your answers? And so yeah, I know that his work is accurate, is what I'm trying to say. And so it goes all the way back to 180 BC. And it's interesting the people that we found. Of course, you know, everybody's related to royalty because royalty is the only one that ever kept genealogical resources other than other than the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church did as well, but the Catholic Church was royalty basically. That, you know, so anyway, yeah, it's interesting. It's just interesting.
Well, and Jack Whitman's wanting to know what we've been talking about, the context. So we're talking about second coming signs in the temple, but also my friend Betty here, Betty Horn, she lives in Florida, and we also were talking about the Milton hurricane that she'd been through. I am going to have to go.
And the miracles involved, because and that's one of the signs. That's one of the signs of the second coming is all the storms, and the seas will. What is the way it was worded? The seas will
heave beyond their bounds.
Heave beyond their bounds. Yeah, and so it's like, yeah, this is all prophecy being fulfilled.
Well, and that says something when you have like Jared who does Christian Homestead, and he's like, I can't keep up with it because there's so many natural disasters happening. That tells you something. And he's Mr. Spreadsheet.
Yeah.
If he was some merch and stuff, it would be like, I have a spreadsheet for that. On my spreadsheet, you know, with little tags of like 50 or more.
Yeah. He's so meticulous. He's another one that's meticulous. Yeah. Yep.
And I am going to be sharing different people's YouTube channels because I know my husband had said, he's like, the hardest thing is Haystack. How's it going? I know it always happens when you say you're going to go that people get on.
Yeah.
But plus Haystack, him and Christian Zybar, well, Z-Bar, but he likes it being called Zybar, so we'll go with that. They tried when we were on there multiple times.
Oh my gosh.
I just put on the description of this one, Betty, I'm like, take number 15 or something. You know, it's amazing. I mean, look at how many of us can like share our testimony. Look, you know, with how many people. I did a live stream a couple of days ago, and there's 354 people that came by, and I was like, look, did somebody get something from what I'm saying?
Yeah,
you know, and I just think too that's why to me I'm like, the Savior's gotta come like before too long, because to me there's just too much information out there. We're not supposed to have evidence, like, you know, there is evidence that can prove a lot of things if people want to know. Like Haystack was just talking to Rod Meldrum, and and Haystack, my husband will be really jealous. Thomas, Lord of the Stings, Jonathan Hayes. Haystack, he is going to have something published of a translation of his from Egyptian into Wayne May's book. According, as long as that's still happening, which I'm like, oh, that is so awesome. But then you have Jared from Christian Homestead, and his dad was friends with Wayne May, and he doesn't really care. And I'm like, Jared, what's up with Wayne May, man? I know my husband, Ojibwe. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and my husband also, he's loved Native American stuff. He's been really into that, and I'm like, on my ancestry it says Native American because it's like indigenous Mexican. I don't know. Yeah. So that, and I have really felt that strongly, and I know that Haystack has looked into and has talked with Chief Miniga, and I was kind of going along with some of that stuff for a while. Now it's kind of gone off on this other turn, but I just think that it's interesting. It's good for us to have the Spirit and use it so we can learn stuff from different places. But then there are those times where it's like, okay, the Spirit's saying that like, we don't have the evidence of this right now. We're not supposed to. And I'm super excited when Deepak Christofferson was reminding us that no knowledge will be withheld. And I was like, oh, there's so much knowledge, and we're getting so much right now. And so much has been covered up, and people I mean, there's a little boy in our ward named Clay. He's a little towhead boy, little blonde, and he has cancer, and it just kills me. He just had a brain tumor removed, and he was in chemo at primaries, and he's come back, and he's in a wheelchair, and he's not the same. And his communication and his response, and it, if I didn't have the gospel and know the things I know, I would just be so angry. You know? Yeah. And like I was telling you, I've had a dream before, and I've had times where I'm like, I'm not the only person I'm upset with is the adversary, because he's messing with people that I love and care about, and people that I don't remember from knowing people from the pre-existence. Yeah. But I don't know if you've had this experience, but I have people that I know it's them. And they're from a distance away. And I'm like, there's a girl, her name is Becca Ward. She started working with me. And she was clear far down, multiple registers down. There was no reason for me to know that was Becca. But I was like, that's Becca down there. And there was just no way for me to know. And I've had other people where sometimes you see somebody like, they look familiar of the backside of this person that I know, but then go, no, but that's not them. But I've had multiple times I'm like, oh, that's them. One spiritual experience, and to me showing of like this time of the second coming, that happening, the veil being thin, is it was in the celestial room on my post, which is really good for me to sit there and be quiet, because I'm not good at being quiet and sitting still. The Father blessed me with 7 children, because he knows that I would be too much for one child. That everybody would feel so bad for that poor child, because I'm a lot. But anyways, because I just was looking forward to being a mom so bad. Anyways, but I was in the celestial room, and there was a lady who was crying, and I just patiently waited. I was, just trying to be in tune with the spirit, and I was like, I'm gonna give her a hug when she's ready, because I'm by the door. She's gonna come by me, and she came up, and I gave her a hug, and I just said, good job being here, And she said, this is the first time I've been here since my husband passed, and she was she was in her 30s, maybe early 30s. Yeah. And it was interesting because my husband was working. Jonathan. Yes, you gotta say hi, Jonathan. Yeah. Oh, so if you're not seeing Jonathan, my husband, Thomas, he's the Lord of the Things. He wants to know what book you're going to be in. Your Ojibwe translation is going to be in. Jonathan, my husband wants to know what the book is, if you know what book it is. Anyways, so we'll read it. So the haystack says, all right, let's see. Gotta go back. Sorry, it's a lot, right? We're just talking. I'm glad they're talking too. Hey, guys. We're back away. Sorry. Okay. So my husband said the one in Idaho was actually first. That's Lord of the Stings. And Jack Woodman says Lord of the Stings, Idaho Falls or Boise. I forget. So we're in the Boise area. So Lord of the Stings, my husband says I was actually up between Yellowstone and Chalice. And let's see, Jack Woodman, you are over in Washington. It starts with a K. I can't remember which town. Okay. Yeah, and Jack Woodman says different puzzle pieces with gifts of the spirit. Yep. My explanation too. Yeah, definitely. And I love when I've been talking with people and they're like, it's like we're on the same frequency. How are we thinking the same thing? And like, it's kind of like a husband and wife. Like that happens. And you say the other half of my brain. And my husband will be like, well, we should have talked about this first because we've done the same things. Yeah. Anyways, so Jacqueline says, Lord of the Stings just got here. So missing context, Teton flood. And I mentioned you had the Hurricane Milton, which she was on an interview with the haystack, Jonathan, who's on the chat right now. Okay, then Lord of the Stings, Jacqueline, they were talking about a couple of earthquakes. Almost felt like 2 that happened during the beginning of COVID, one in Idaho and a couple weeks later in Salt Lake when the trumpet, Angel Moroni dropped his trumpet. ASAC just made it. Thank you for coming back again, ASAC. I think you've been on 3 of my live stream attempts. At least, maybe more. Okay. Then my husband, Lord, this thing says there will be, and have already been many natural disasters. That is clear. Yes. Then the haystack says, Ojibwe. Then my husband says, what? I want one. And then my husband says, the native peoples in what we now call Mexico and Central Mexico were not Spanish. So they were not Mexican or Hispanic. Your DNA is from that people. He's talking about me. My DNA is from that people. No Spanish, so you are in fact Native American. Yeah, I don't have any Spanish in me.
I don't either.
But if I was speaking Spanish, I would be normal, because you're talking about being fast. I speak really fast and I slur my words together. So I'm like, wait a minute, if I was speaking Spanish, I'd be normal. I'm just speaking the wrong language. Yeah. And so
I'm Irish.
Oh yeah, I have. I can never remember if Roundy Hills Roundy is my maiden name. I can never remember if it's in Scotland or Ireland. Okay.
Chatham's my maiden name, and it's actually an English name. Chatham. It's actually an English name, but my family comes from Ireland. My the ancestor that I found is John Chatham, and he was from County Armagh, which is the northeast county in Ireland. And his son William was born in Dublin, and then they immigrated to the to the colonies. At that point, it was before the war.
Did you do what I did when they announced the temple in Ireland? I went, yes.
Absolutely. That was just so awesome.
When you look at the temples and you see where they are, I'm like, but what about Ireland? They're on an island here themselves. Yeah. They need a temple.
Yeah.
No habla español.
Poquitito.
Yeah, one of my coworkers, Jeremy, he and I have worked at a system where he says things to me in Spanish, and then I tell him what it's called in English. So we're both learning.
Yeah.
And that's how I got my friend to start to put herself out there today, guys. Is okay, she was asking for the help, right? But I told her, I'm like, okay, if you put yourself out there, I'll work on speaking Spanish. I still haven't done that good at it. And I have many coworkers. I work at Walmart. I have many coworkers that speak Spanish, and I try and make myself, but I'm afraid. So anyways, I was
that way. I was that way, and I was living in the culture.
Yeah.
But I was afraid to speak. I was afraid because I don't have as much of a fear now. I had a fear of being made fun of. I just don't like being made fun of. But when now it's like I almost don't care. It's like, think what you want. I don't care.
Yeah. That's why we do YouTube, right, Betty? Good thing we got open up, because it'd be pretty rough. So
yeah.
And that's what
Hablo, entiendo, escribo fluido, más o menos. You can write well. You can write well. I don't know what entiendo means. And,
he's intimidated. So he's intimidated to speak Spanish, but he's fluent to write it. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's what. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and Jack Lumen said what you missed earlier too. We were talking about, because I'm going to have to get off in a little bit because I have to go to work in a bit. Actually,
I have to get off.
No, you did that horribly. But we were talking about how different people we've come across that could speak. That we're talking about, like temple workers speaking 7 languages when they're in the temple, and then outside of the temple, they get out the door. Yeah, healers. Yeah. They can only speak 1 language.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to have a video about how the Quorum of the 12. I'm quite sure that there's never been so many languages in the Quorum of the 12 and the First Presidency as there is right now.
I think so. I think you're right. Just the prophet himself speaks like 12 different languages.
Yeah,
I don't know for sure, but
he's he says he's like fluent, I think, more in like 7, but he has researched and looked into to be able to communicate, and I think at least like 12.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I looked this up to see like what countries, like how many languages there are, like how close are we getting to being able to reach the whole world. Is people are like, you got to reach everybody, but it's like the Papua New Guinea area islands. I think there's 800 languages over in that area.
Yeah.
800. There's no way we can do this without the Lord and AI and everything else. So, anyways,
talk about being the great grandson of Ray Lucero Pratt. I learned recently that I'm a descendant of Porter Rockwell.
Oh.
that his mother was my great grandfather's first cousin.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you got to understand me. My generations are old. And I mean that by my grandmother was born in 1883. My grandfather was born in 1873.
Mm-hmm.
So their parents were born in like 1840, somewhere around there. And it's that generation that was related to the Rockwells. Well, to his mother. So, yeah.
That's cool. Good job reading that, Betty, because I was going to just go and not read that last thing. But yeah, I have to go to work.
Yeah, I got to go too. I got to get something to eat so my blood sugar isn't crazy.
Before we watch Betty pass out, there was one time on Jared Christian Homestead, he was doing a video, like, and I was in the live stream chat, and I'm like, who wants to bet on when Jared's going to fall asleep?
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, you're probably right.
Well, it's been great. It's been great. And again, we'll have to do this again now that you know, contact me through email and I know the right phone to use.
I'll read what you said real quick. I have had a wonderful experience with indexing and temple work for Latin America baptismal records. Absolutely lovely. Oh, that's awesome. About how old are you? Because I don't have any idea. I'm just curious, by the way. Betty, are you in your 60s? Are you 70s?
I'm 69. I'll be 70 my next birthday.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I'm 43. But
you're younger than my youngest son.
Oh, yeah.
My younger son would have been 48, and my oldest son would have been 50.
Yeah. Well, my husband isn't as old as my husband's a couple years older than me, but the girls keep teasing him that he's 48. He's not appreciating that. But we have 2 kids that are married now, so it's less bad for us to feel like we're old because we're like, hey, we want to be grandparents. So
we're great grandparents. We're great grandparents of 1, 2, 3, 4 kids.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we have another grandchild on the way.
Oh, cool. So
yeah,
are old enough to know, but are still too young to care. Yeah, that's my husband. I'm still waiting to find out how old Jack Lumen is. But anyways, maybe he'll comment later on the conversation after this post.
Yeah. But we both gotta go.
Yeah, for persevering and being willing to come back. I was like, please not communicate with Betty because I'm gonna make this drop if I go. So, anyways, so all right, we'll talk to you later, Betty. Thanks for the woman. Everybody's been in the chat. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye bye.
Oh, I am 50. Good job chiming in. Bye.